views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try.
Hello, welcome to my show. Hey, I rhymed. This is Patty Hunter, and this is my show called Patty's Page. Welcome. I have two special guests today. On the far left of me is Dr. Christina Francis, and she is with American Association of Pro-Life Obstetrician and Gynecologists, or short for AAPLOG, APLOG?
Yes.
APLOG. And you work here in Fort Wayne itself.
I do.
As a gynecologist,
I do.
OBGYN.
Mm-hmm.
And beside me, to my left, is Cathie Humbarger, and she does work for part-time for Indiana Right to Life and part-time Allen County Right to Life. Wow, you're cut in between.
Well, most people in pro-life work wear more than one hat, Patty, so thank you so much for having me again today.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad you guys came.
I'm glad to be here.
I have a number of questions. I hope you didn't mind.
Sure.
That's why we're here.
That's right.
That's good. So, what positions do you have in both of those Right to Life?
I'm the Vice President of Policy Enforcement for Indiana Right to Life, and I'm the Executive Director of Allen County Right to Life.
She wears a couple of good hats.
She does. She does, and she does very good work.
Thank
and
you.
how long have you been a gynecologist?
I have been in practice for about 6 years. I just have been here in Fort Wayne for a little over a year now.
So where are you from?
From Evansville, so from the southern part of the state.
So that's nice. And so what made you move here? Just the jobs? Or?
Well, actually, Cathie played a big role in me coming to Fort Wayne. So I had been practicing overseas at a mission hospital in Kenya, in Africa, for 3 years, and felt that the need for pro-life work here in the U.S. was a little bit greater than the need that I was meeting in Kenya, and so felt drawn to come back to the U.S. to do pro-life work. And so I had met Cathie through a mutual friend and knew that she was doing a lot of really great work here in the Fort Wayne area. And then the church that I attend is very involved with pro-life work.
Good.
So that was motivation for coming to the Fort Wayne area as well, and had a few other connections in the Fort Wayne area. So it made sense to kind of localize here.
And
So-
Dr. Francis has been a huge blessing to our efforts here in Northeast Indiana and across the state, actually. To have a doctor who, a lot of doctors are pro-life, but to have a doctor who's an OBGYN, who is very passionate about the issue to the point where you're willing to change your location and career plans, has been just a tremendous asset.
So if a lot of the OBGYNs don't do the abortions, who taught these abortionists to do what they do?
Well, you know, I think
Are they a OBGYN themselves, or?
most physicians that are performing abortions are OBGYNs by training.
Right.
It is something that's offered during residency training. Now, I did my residency at a Catholic hospital, so we did not do abortions. But it was offered to people coming into our residency program. If that's something you want to be trained in, we can allow you to go to another program where they do that training just for that. To be honest with you, I don't know of anyone for many years in my residency program that took them up on that, because it does seem to be that even those OBGYNs who had identified themselves perhaps as pro-choice or kind of apolitical on the issue don't actually want to be involved with performing the abortions.
Yeah, I thought the doctor's oath was supposed to be helping instead of taking life.
Exactly. You know, when I became a medical student, one of my first ceremonies for medical school was our white coat ceremony, where we were given our short white coats. At the time, for a student, you wear a short white coat. But part of that ceremony was that we recited together the Hippocratic Oath that really governs how we as physicians care for patients. And part of that, this is not in the exact wording, but part of the essence of that Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm, and that we are to put the needs and well-being of our patients at an utmost priority. And as an OBGYN, not only is that pregnant mama who's coming to see me my patient, but her unborn child is also my patient. And I do feel that I have a responsibility to protect that child as well. And so you're right. It's really beyond me how
it's
people.
Not logical.
You're right.
Really.
You're right.
I
It
can't
is.
understand why people even do abortion. I know it's been around for hundreds of years, different civilizations and have their own thing. But I thought we would be a little bit more civilized in this country. Even in Kenya, do they have abortion?
Abortion on demand is not legal currently in Kenya. However, when I was living there in 2010, they did vote on and pass a new constitution that allowed a little bit more loopholes for abortions to be done. So for a medical practitioner to say that there was a medical necessity for there to be an abortion, then it is now allowed. And some friends of mine who are still there have been keeping me updated and telling me that they're seeing more and more abortions occurring in that country. And unfortunately, a lot of American and international NGOs are helping in promoting the abortion agenda in Kenya.
Well, Obama's not helping.
Unfortunately, we do have a very pro-abortion president. You're right. You're right.
So what are your views on all this? Why people are aborting in the first place?
I think women who are in a crisis, be it a crisis pregnancy that we're talking about or any other crisis, or not just women, but anyone in a crisis is looking for an answer. Unfortunately, in our country and in many countries around the world, the women believe the lie that for a price, an abortionist can erase the life of their baby. That's the lie that they're sold.
As a lump of tissue or
Right.
not a real babe?
A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who had an abortion decision in her past, explained it to me this way. She said, "Have you ever done anything you didn't want anyone to know about?" And I said, "Of course." And she said, if someone had come to you at that moment and said, "If you give me $350 or $400 or whatever the going rate is, I can erase this, nobody will ever know, and it will make you unpregnant in that situation," would you be tempted to give someone that money so that nobody would ever know?
Depends on the pressure and
So when she put it that way, it helped me understand that if it's legal, and I've had many women who've chosen an abortion that have said to me, "But I made that decision because it was legal." I can understand in the moment of crisis why someone would consider abortion as a way out. So I encourage people who know someone who's in a crisis pregnancy or maybe themselves to not make any hasty decisions.
Right.
Don't make it in isolation.
Right.
And get all the facts. And the technology that we've seen develop over the years, particularly ultrasound,
You're right.
has been a tremendous asset to help the mother in a crisis pregnancy understand the humanity of her baby. So it's not going to make her unpregnant. It's going to make her the mother of a dead baby.
Well, she is a mother whether the baby is born or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it affects them many years afterwards, and they don't have a closure or anything like that. My late aunt was an abortionist up in Toronto, and she aborted a lot of babies. I don't know where she is now, but I hope she repented before she died.
Sure.
But
Well, there's forgiveness at the foot of the cross of the Lord Jesus Christ for that sin and any others.
You know something? It took me about almost 40 years to forgive her. I was that angry with her.
Sure, sure.
And that's sad, you know. So I've known people who have had abortions, and it's affecting them mentally and physically. I know someone who did have an abortion when they were in their 20s. When she was in her 30s, she almost died, having her, her second child. So, it did do damage in her.
And I think that's important for women to realize as they're facing a very difficult decision. And that's oftentimes how I counsel women who come to see me who are contemplating abortion. Not only do we talk about what is going on in their life that makes them feel like that's their only decision or their only way out of that situation, but we also talk about the very real risks that exist, not only to their mental health in the future if they have an abortion. Studies show that there's a definite increased risk of depression and suicide in post-abortive women, and but also their physical health is jeopardized. They have an increased risk of breast cancer, and there's increased risk to future pregnancies of preterm deliveries and miscarriages and other complications such as that. And so I think that it's important for women to be informed and be fully informed, and that's something that they're not fully informed about when they go to places like Planned Parenthood or other abortion clinics that are trying to push them into an abortion decision.
Planned Parenthood, how long has that been in existence? I forgot. Since
I
the
think
40s?
it's nearing 100 years. Yes.
Right.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So with Planned Parenthood, why do they call it Planned Parenthood when they don't plan parents to have their children?
It's a good question.
I think it was probably a marketing decision.
Oh, so they can catch like a hook. So, what do they provide anything at all that's even positive? Besides
yes, they do. They do provide some cancer screenings and some other women's health services that, by the way, are provided by literally thousands of other organizations across the country who do not also provide abortions.
That's right.
Planned Parenthood's services are commingled; they're tied together. So the funds that are given for other services frees up money then to support their abortion business. Depending on your definition of do they offer good services.
Positive.
Yes, positive services. They do offer other services, again, but many of those services, all of those services are available other places.
To their services go straight to abortion. They don't want to help the children. They want to destroy them. Well, pregnancy centers such as a Hope Center is there. There's several different Hope Centers here in Fort Wayne.
And women's care centers as well.
Women's care centers. And we have to re-educate the people. For some reason, children aren't brought up in it started in a we generation, wasn't it? Me generation, many moons ago in the 50s and 60s. And then the children of the people of the me generation are brought up thinking it's okay to have an abortion.
Well, I think it's a natural tendency of all of us, Patty, to want to get out of a problem as opposed to walk through the difficulties. And it's amazing how our character grows in the midst of those difficult circumstances. But I think in any difficult circumstances, it's human nature to look for an easy fix, a quick way out. Typically those quick fixes and easy way, the easy way out doesn't end up being all that good of a fix or that easy of a way out. There are consequences that go along with those decisions.
Well, recently in the news, they've been talking about videos coming out. Let's talk about that. what's her name? Deborah Nicotola, who's also an MD. What has she been doing?
Well, you know, for me, watching those videos, and I was actually in Washington, D.C. With a pro-life organization the week that that first video broke. And so for me, seeing another OBGYN talk about while she's eating her lunch and drinking her wine, talking about how she can harvest as many livers as they would like, and limbs are no problem, and how
Of babies.
Exactly, and how they are changing their procedure to essentially a partial birth abortion, which is illegal in this country, in order to obtain those organs intact, right? And then
For
talking
money.
about different prices for different organs, and haggling over the prices, and how can we get the most for this and that. And, you know, it's wrong on so many levels. Very basic, at the most basic level, it's wrong because we're talking about the destruction of human life. And that would be wrong whether they were profiting off of the sale of those organs or not. And I think that's important to emphasize. But then when you add on top of that the fact that they are very obviously profiting from the sales of these organs, that's wrong. It's also wrong that they're changing their procedure, which breaks another federal law, so that they can obtain that tissue for sale.
So how are they going to prove? I mean, they talked about it, but how
Right.
can they prove they're actually doing that? Do they have people going in and do undercover stuff?
Well, this
that's
whole
a-
investigation was an undercover
Sting.
investigation done by undercover
But it was done in
journalists.
public.
Well, the conversations were, some of them were taped in public places, but what this calls for is a full investigation into the practices of Planned Parenthood.
I would indeed.
That will need to be a government initiated process. So the more information that comes out, the more pressure there is on the governmental authorities to look behind the closed doors of Planned Parenthood and determine exactly what is going on. So I think it's is a little premature for us to say this is happening or that is happening, but there is enough evidence certainly
to make them
to require
investigate.
a full investigation.
Well, I was kind of curious. More stories, horror stories, are coming out about the abortionists themselves and what they've been doing to the wee children, how they've been killing them. And a lot of people are starting to get their eyes open and more aware. That's why we're here on this show and other shows and radio and newspapers and stuff, that we have to help the community say, we've had enough. We want to keep our babies. We don't want to kill anymore. This is a death culture, and I'm trying to teach, to share that we have to get away from this death culture. Where's our compassion? Where did it go?
Right. Right.
And we need it back. I mean, we are in a country that they prefer animal, against animal abuse, and that in turn they turn on the human babies. I don't understand.
Well, I certainly commend you, Patty, for your efforts to continue this conversation. Most of what we're learning through these videos, we've known for years. We've just not been able to prove it. I remember seeing those menu lists of those order sheets 20 years ago.
20 years.
We knew back then that these things were going on, but it took this next generation and the technology that they have available and the courage that they have to do these investigations. And I think the social media and the other ways that we have to communicate to people are helping us get that word out, because we can't always rely on, and again, this is another case, on the mainstream media to share these stories. So
the government tells them what to do.
I think everything is coming together right now for this to be brought before those who wanted to avert their eyes, who wanted to not know what was going on behind the closed doors of an abortion facility. It's making it impossible for that to continue.
Right.
So it's incumbent upon every one of us who know the truth to continue the conversation, because this could fade away from the national spotlight as quickly as it came on the scene. But we need to continue talking about it.
Yes, it's
And we must not let it fade.
It's like a taboo subject, but it has to be shown to people. This is what really is happening out there. Right. The doctors are not helping the babes. They're killing the babes.
And not all doctors, of course.
I mean, the abortionists,
Yeah.
So this is not right. I mean, we have to always say we've got to keep on our toes, because each generation as it goes by, they have to have more and more people like us to open up. They're opening up their eyes now.
Well, I have to tell you, Patty, that I have never been more encouraged than I have been in the last few years, as I've seen the students step up to the plate, and as if we've had an opportunity to invest in them so that they can finish this this fight. I have to admit, shamefully, that I was part of the generation that stood by and allowed this to happen in the first place.
Same here.
So as we see the next generation come up, though, they know that these are babies, and they are passionate about making certain that they're the voice for these unborn little boys and girls who are being dismembered and discarded with surgical waste.
I don't even like to hear that word.
And none of us do, but that's the reality.
You know, I was raised Roman Catholic, and I went in Toronto because of my aunt being an abortionist. I joined up with Birthright, and I was helping with the little dolls, fetus.
The models?
The models, okay, I'm sorry. The models of the babes as they grew in the womb. And I was helping as many as I could with the people that I was with. So as soon as I moved down here, I joined up whoever was for pro-life.
And you've been very faithful, Patty.
And we need more people to do exactly what you've been doing and keeping the word out there. Like Cathie said, you know, we've got a lot of momentum right now, and lots of people, as you said, their eyes are being opened to what the reality is. And without a lot of mainstream media coverage, you know, I fear the same thing, that this is going to be allowed to fade away and people are going to forget about it again. So we need as many.
This is going on YouTube.
That's right.
This is going on YouTube.
We need that. And in the age of social media, it is a little bit easier to keep things like this in people's consciousness. Right.
It's about time, eh?
Right.
I'm glad that YouTube is in existence, and Facebook. Sometimes people on Facebook, well, you know, but other things, like you, that's how I communicate with you. So, thank you. We have several minutes left in this conversation. Is there anything last thing you want to say to my audience?
I sense in my heart that at this point in history, this is a watershed time. At some point in the future, we're going to look back at the year 2015, and we're going to say that's when the tide turned. And I would just encourage the listeners to please be involved, be educated, make certain that you share with your circle of influence the truth of what abortion is. Help us pull back that curtain and expose this evil business, this evil industry for what it is. And if anyone is listening that's made an abortion decision, please know that there's help and hope, free and confidential. Look up your local crisis pregnancy center phone number. Call them today. Don't stay in that prison cell of regret. Please, please contact the people that are waiting to help you, and step out and tell your story, because there's nothing like your story that's going to change hearts and minds. Stay in the fight. We're about at a tipping point, and we all need to stay vigilant and engaged.
And you, Dr. Francis?
Well, I would echo Cathie's words and you know, encourage people from my standpoint as a physician. You know, when you, especially the women out there, when you go to see your doctor, I would challenge you to ask them where they stand on the life issue. And if they say that they're pro-life, encourage them in that. This is a tough field to be pro-life and to remain that way. And so, you know, encourage your physicians when you're seeing them. And then if they say that they're not, you know, I would encourage you to challenge them as to why not, and ask them, you know, where their thoughts on that come, and engage them in conversation about that. I also would encourage any woman who is either contemplating an abortion or has had one in the past to be able to identify pro-life physicians such as myself and come in. I'm happy to talk to you, as well as the other resources that Cathie referenced. And then I think especially for people involved in churches, I would challenge you.
Right.
Yes, if your church is not talking about this, you should approach your pastor and those in leadership in your church and ask them why not. We as Christians and as churches need to be leading the fight against abortion in this country. We need to not sit back and allow it to happen. When we sit back and we're silent, we are complicit in what is happening. And so challenge your churches. This is not a political issue at its heart. It's a morality issue, and it's a societal injustice that churches should be leading the fight on. And so I would encourage, I'm so blessed to go to a church that discusses this on a weekly basis, but I know that that's not the norm. And so for those of you who are attending churches where this is not being discussed, please, please, please challenge your pastors to discuss this. If your pastors need support in this, I'm sure that they can access that through Right to Life's website to receive support. I also work with an organization called Life Training Institute, and myself or anyone else from our organization will be happy to come in and lead training sessions or help your pastor as well to be able to discuss this. So please challenge your pastors if they're not talking about this, that this is something that needs to be discussed, especially during this time.
Well, we're practically at the end of my episode with you two. I'd like to thank everybody. Cathie, thank you.
God bless you.
And you, Christina.
Thank you.
Oh, good, great.
for having me.
Thank you, audience, for listening. And this is a very important conversation we had. I hope you will remember. I'm putting this on YouTube for sure. So I hope to see everybody next week, and God bless.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above.